In the communities of video games, there are several cliques who interact with others to varying degrees. RPG players, shooter players, arcade gamers, indie gamers, many people describe themselves with one or more of these labels to describe the general sorts of games they like, which is helpful when soliciting or offering recommendations or having conversations just in general. But amongst all these groups, there's one group that always seems to feel like a conspicuous outsider. Sports game players. Why? I believe there are a myriad of reasons which I would like to discuss, but more importantly, I would like to attempt to understand what attracts players to these games, and then try to scaffold off from there to suggest other games I truly believe people who play sports games would also enjoy. But before that, let me introduce myself. I'm Marcus Future, also known as the Timeline Man. I consider myself something of a variety gamer, meaning I tend to enjoy most types of games. Importantly, that doesn't mean I'm actually all that great at any of them. You know, I think I'm getting pretty decent at this game. Ignore that. Yeah, I just enjoy playing them. Even amongst most people who claim this label, sports games are one of two categories that are often ignored, the other being mobile games. But I was raised on the discount bin, and sports games often ended up there. $5 for, like, NFL 2003. Like, you know, stuff like that. So I've played my fair share. Recently I got back to looking at the games, and now that my brain is a lot more closer to full development and I can look at these games and understand how to play them. I used to play these when I was like 7, and I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. With a little title called NFL 2K1 for the Sega Dreamcast, because I bought a Dreamcast and I've been trying to get games for it. So yeah, that's right, this is secretly a Dreamcast video. More of that later. We've got a lot to go through, so let's get started with... There are many reasons that various people have for disliking sports games and the people who play them, and they vary in coherence and validity. There are a lot of people who just have that gatekeeper mindset that people who only play Madden or 2K, quote-unquote, aren't real gamers, or something like that. I have no interest in engaging with that line of thinking, so I'm gonna skip over those more flimsy arguments for everyone's sake, and skip to the more substantial ideas. These appear to be either that they have a habit of supporting a yearly release schedule, or that they have zero interest in any other games. Those are really the only ideas I've seen that are prevalent that aren't also based in a very 90s sense of jock versus nerd that I would rather not exist, nor do I understand due to who I grew up around. So let's tackle these one at a time, shall we? So this is a reason I've held myself in the past, because the players of these sorts of games buy the new one each year. It financially supports an awful business practice that results in worse games. For a while, because companies saw such success with this model, there were companies that wanted to do the same with franchises in different genres, like Assassin's Creed, as a pretty big offender, releasing yearly up until about 2018. Fans of that series have long said that they felt like these games started getting worse for a long time. The idea of yearly releases was blamed on sports games and the people buying. And then, you know, people also bought the Assassin's Creed games, but, you know. This frustration also affects the secondary market. I, myself, am someone who is prone to browsing used game stores. When my husband bought an Xbox One kinda recently, I went to one of these stores in hopes of finding a game they would like. Instead, I found a wall of past titles of sports from previous years. They're like a plague upon these stores. If I go and look for Madden 22, which mind you was only 3 years ago, I could get a copy for like $6. That's how absurdly many of them there are floating around, and how little anyone wants them. At this low price, it never goes away. That Dreamcast copy I bought, $5. That season is 24 years out of date on a console that didn't sell very well at all. To me, that sounds like a novelty item for a collector, but instead they clog up these stores to hopefully be picked up by someone who's either curious or nostalgic for that specific year. And the worst of it is that it doesn't really seem like these games do anything new each year. At least not the big sport titles like Madden, NBA, or FIFA. From what I've seen, MLB games try some wacky things kind of often. I saw some ads actually for like MLB The Show 2025, I think, and they had like a roguelike mode. I mean, off topic. No idea how all that works with that MLB stuff, but it seems unique. Honestly, MLB The Show seems to be exceptional to all the issues with yearly releases. From what I've read, there seems to be some pretty cool stuff in each year. Happy for those baseball fans. I'm not. Otherwise, most of these are usually small updates, like roster changes, new animations, and back-end logic, and whatever regulation changes happened in the actual sport that year. You know, like, different rules change in these sports, as much as people like to act like these rules are set in stone. At the professional level, these rules change. It's to the point that if a non-standard sport title releases within a given year, it will be the winner of the Sports Game of the Year award that year. And if one doesn't, it's gone to the MLB The Show. At least since the turn of the decade in 2020. And the last time gaming was swept up in news about a new change in a sport title, it was FIFA's god-awful monetary practices with their, like, gotcha mechanics. And that's not cool. That's not a fun addition. That just sucks. But here's the thing. The gamers are generally aware of this from this genre. I can't speak for the fanbase at large, because I'm not exactly involved in it that much. But from the fistful of content creators I've seen talk about this, and the couple people I know in real life that play these games, which is like 4 people, they're all rather frustrated about this business model, as it leads to buggy releases that never quite get solved, poorly thought out added mechanics, straight up inaccurate depictions of players, which is crazy, and overall a feeling that you can't really get invested in any singular title because it'll all be washed away next year anyway. And unfortunately, these sentiments don't really matter when people keep buying the games now, does it? This makes these game fans no different than Pokemon fans, who are also often saying that they'd like Game Freak to slow down and take a minute to fully make a Pokemon game, but then they're also seen line up to buy the next title that releases anyway, and then complain about the new thing online. Gamers are awful. These people suck. That's just how game fan bases are, I guess. Core fans of games will rarely be appealed to for the franchise for it to be improved, because it never hurts the company's wallet. Good luck trying to organize some sort of boycott from a fandom that didn't even work for Harry Potter fans, many of whom are of the opinion that the series creator is a despicable person, rightfully so. But they still bought the game. You know, it's like, great, cool. So basically, it's not entirely the player's fault that this business model continues, though yes, if they just stopped buying the games, the model would change. Or would it? See, sport franchises are in a weird spot. They exist because of contracts between real-life sport organizations and a company who makes the games. Usually EA, or a company called Visual Concepts, who are published by 2K. These contracts usually have things like timed licenses to player likenesses, and if I had to guess, they also include the yearly release schedule. Unfortunately for both developers and players, the people negotiating these contracts are suits, upper management executives, who are well known for learning the wrong lessons. These people seem the type to put their hand on a hot stove, get burned, and then declare stoves as a dangerous weapon and order them removed entirely. Like, that's the mindset of these types of people. So there is a possibility that if the franchise sports titles would be abandoned and boycotted, these executives would get the message, nobody wants to play these sorts of games at all, and the contracts would be renewed, and that'd be the end of these games. Not an ideal situation. Well, it technically also give a different company the chance at the license. It's also possible that the groups behind these sports would just stop licensing for video games, and that'd be lame. There are two possibilities around this source of ire. Either it's been true to many gamers anecdotally that people who like sports games are uncaring toward any other games, though maybe something like Call of Duty gets looped in with that. The second is that people are fed up with certain types of content creators. I don't personally watch these sorts of creators, it's just not the stuff that I like to watch, but there are a number of pretty popular creators who will just play and cover news regarding these sports titles, and again, larger gaming community often loops the military shooter crowd in with this sentiment. I'm not talking about them though. Oftentimes, these sorts of creators will complain loudly about how gaming sucks nowadays because their limited scope of yearly released games aren't blowing them away that games used to when they were 12 or so. People who play a wide variety of games, especially people who play a bunch of different indie titles, like me, that's me, they get really frustrated at this sentiment. I'll grant this sentiment comes out of content creators who are focused on one genre or even one franchise in just about any category. I've seen, in the past, I've seen some RPG content creators get really frustrated with the state of gaming. Not recently, but in the past. But like, sports games and these yearly releases just tend to have more attention on them, and a lot more people who just parrot what they say without nuance, which makes their voice of the world a lot louder and a lot more annoying. Now, I don't exactly have the reach to conduct a survey on this, nor do I think my particular audience would be the people to respond to surveys. Unfortunately, I could really only offer my own anecdotes. Now, I'm not surrounded by people who play these games anymore. I definitely was when I was in high school, but I'm autistic and really only surrounded by people with other autistic kids where we talked about things like Transformers and witchcraft and strange pagan religions. However, I do have a regular job where I have coworkers, some of whom are the type who play video games and sports games. One of my coworkers in particular is a real sports fan. They have a favorite football and baseball team. They follow their seasons each year. In recent years, this is apparently a really serious chore to do with like streaming contracts and shit. That's off topic. I asked them one day, do you play sports games? They said they loved them. From there, I asked a few things I'll talk about later, but the part that's relevant right now is just a brief part of the exchange while she was mentioning that she's rather annoyed by the yearly release method. The other game that they liked was Fallout, so here's a quote. That's why I like Fallout. Each of those games has a bunch of time between release, and they're pretty different. Now, as to whether each Fallout game is an improvement on the previous is an argument I'd rather choose glass than get into right now. Honestly. But yeah, each Fallout game is pretty different from the last one, especially compared to yearly release sports games, whose dev cycles often have to reuse assets wherever possible for as long as possible to save time. But more importantly, this was information given to me entirely unprompted. She also gave me a game that she also enjoys. It's an entirely different genre, its appeal is entirely different, but it's a game she enjoys nevertheless. Now, one person isn't a great sample size, but I only have two people. The second is one of the people who babysat me growing up. He transitioned in recent years, and I haven't spoken to him since then for unrelated reasons. Unfortunately, I don't really have contact for them anymore. So while I'm trying my best to keep pronouns consistent here, I called him she for many of the formative years of my life, and only really after I stopped talking to him did he ask to be called he, so I might slip up at some point. I'm sorry. Alright, just know that I mean he, just retroactively, throughout this whole video, throughout this whole section, alright? Cool. Alright. Anyway, while growing up, this babysitter had a large influence on my view and access to gaming. He was also a giant Broncos fan. The Christmas before he came into our home, we had been given a PlayStation 1 and 2 for some reason, both consoles. I don't know. And along with it came a hand-me-down collection of games for the systems, which included a few different years of Madden and Tiger Woods games. Now, I had gone golfing with my dad and grandpa, so I played the Tiger Woods games more often just because of familiarity with the sport. But in boredom, I played the Madden games as well. At first, the babysitter was more than okay with indulging my antics trying to play the football game. However, once he determined that I didn't know how to play at all, his patience grew very thin, very fast. He enjoyed the games, but he was also very competitive and very impatient. So, well, why bring him up here? Well, he played other games. He considered himself the quote-unquote gamer. His other favorite games to play include the Call of Duty franchise, Plants vs. Zombies, Grand Theft Auto, and the MMO Terra, which is kind of out of left field from those other games, I feel. Fun fact, while growing up, he would deny that I was a gamer many times for some reason. Games like Silent Hill, Tomb Raider, Mario, and the RPGs I had grown into weren't gamer to him, I guess. I think it's because he only thought of gaming in a esports sort of way. I don't know. Point being, he played a fair few games himself from a few different circles. These gamers are capable of branching out from officially licensed sports games of each year, and they usually do. I mean, consoles are expensive. If all you play on them is Madden, you're gonna feel like you're wasting money. So then, with that out of the way, let's dissect the second part of this whole ideal. Why do these gamers like these games? We established before that these fan bases aren't just stupid and sucking up each yearly release with joy, but there is still the fact that they're buying them anyway. This is a fandom problem in a couple aspects. I've seen it all over the place. Fans of something are upset about the current state of the thing they love, but they also keep pouring money into the thing. Pokemon, Star Wars, sports, both the video games and the actual state of sports. It's really hard for a fan base to boycott that which they are fans of, and I'm not going to claim I know why. What I do know is the responses I get from the questions I asked my coworker, first of which was, why do you like sports games? She told me 2 reasons, which I will generalize and then break down. It fulfills a fantasy for the season, and you get to be your own character. So let's get into it. I mean, this is really the basis for most video games, I think. It's a fantasy. That's what most people get out of video games. But that you can feel the stories of a hero, save the princess, kill gods, determine the future of the wasteland, build the most perfect city ever, convince people to ride a roller coaster called This One Will Kill You, date 5 women at the same time, kill everyone, save everyone. A lot of games can be boiled down to a fantasy that they offer the player to experience. Most often, and most popularly, it's empowering the player to do something that they can't normally do or experience a world other than our own. Video games have the unique power to allow people to truly feel the fantasy within the media, as their actions drive the world forward in the world of the game. Of course, the fantasy offered by sports games is, what if you were in charge of your favorite team and players, which is attractive to both sides of the crowd. If you're a fan of a team that sucks bad, you can play the game, make trades, use players better than the coach did, or whatever you think that the team did wrong that year. I don't know. Sports fans have tons of reasons. And then you can get to the top. You can win with a team that doesn't normally win. Stuff like that. Or if you're like, I don't know, a Lakers fan, this is a basketball team that's been pretty dominant the entire time I've had memory. You can create dream scenarios and pilot the terrifying victory machine that is the team yourself. This can be seen as the reason why each year these games sell. Each year, the players enter the league, exit the league, have better or worse records, and of course, they all get older. So, in that way, there seems to be some amount of unique appeal in each yearly release, and I would say that used to make the yearly model somewhat defensible. I'll get into my alternative ideas a bit later, though. For now, this one's a no-brainer. People love custom characters, and the reasons are no different in sports games. You can make the best character you could think of, the worst character you could imagine, literally just you, some weird little freak that scares children in the dead of night, who knows, whatever. These games are usually somewhat restrictive in character creation compared to a lot of RPGs, because something like height is a stat that affects gameplay, so they don't usually let players create something like a 4'2" defensive lineman that weighs about the same as a full gallon of milk. But they're still very flexible and are fun unto itself. I know in the run up to there was a college football game that released, I want to say like last year, a couple of years ago. I have no idea when this video is going to go up. But in the run up to that, there were people who got previews of it, and there were people who were putting a lot of emphasis on what you could do with the character stuff because your stats were trainable. And there was one guy that I saw, which was one of the things that led up into me writing this script, was he was just like, how bad can I make a character? How much of a shitter can I make? Can I make it so that they don't want my ass? The created character plays into the fantasy of playing the game. Many players will make a better version of themselves, and a lot of these titles, there's a mode that allows you to play through a season as that character, and in more recent games like the college football one I mentioned, you'd play multiple seasons because you'd go through a college career and, you know, get drafted into like a professional team maybe. Which is like, that's fun, and it creates a solid career experience. It's a hard topic for me to elaborate on, honestly, because at the moment, all I have are memories of some PS2 games, which I think allowed you to create characters. And the only one I currently own is, again, NFL 2K1 for the Dreamcast. Doesn't have that. And even if it did, this shit takes up like almost an entire VMU for a single save. It's kind of bullshit if you ask me. Anyway, let's move on. Now, I've only been looking at a sports game with a reasonably developed brain very recently. I'm not really a fan of any given sports league. With the game I purchased is from a season that happened before I was born, so I have no idea who any of these people are. I only somewhat know most of the teams, so what do I get out of it? Because I enjoy 2K1. I won't lie. NFL 2K1 is honestly a pretty fun game. I don't really have many people to play it with though. But simply, I've been enjoying the football video game for what it is on its bones. A simulation-styled, semi-turn-based, real-time strategy game. Because that's really what it is. Because if you break it down, you have two players with their own collection of, let's call them units. A set number are fielded and a set number held in reserve. Plays are basically simultaneous turns being taken in one of two phases, offense and defense. Once the turns have been chosen at the same time, the players react to each other, slightly editing their turn setup based on how the other appears to be playing. And then, it's a real-time strategy game. The computer handles macro for you, based on the play you picked for the turn, while you handle the micro, whoever you're either controlling on the defense, or whoever has the ball on the offense. In offense, that means running, passing the ball, dodging, hurdling defenders, trying to reach the goal, or at least the first down line. On defense, that means maneuvering for tackles and interceptions, trying to force a turnover. There's a sort of asymmetry to the goals of each side at a given moment. It creates a natural incentive for players to try to trick opponents and experiment with the plays. In 2K1, there's even a button combo that allows you to lie about the UI. If you hold a button and you can basically fake what play you select, and then you can navigate through the menu invisibly to select a real play. Like, what? That's crazy. So that means that if the person sitting next to you on the couch is screen cheating like hell and just kind of staring at your play, you could just lie to them, and that's cool. That's so cool. That's such a cool feature. I don't really have other sports games for other sports. I did have NBA Street for the PS2 back as a kid, and my memories with that are, well, first of all, there was a character creator in that. I do remember thinking that was pretty fun as a kid, even though I didn't really know how to play a fucking game. I didn't know how to play the game, so really the character creator was all I enjoyed about that game. And really, basketball there is just, again, it's a real-time strategy game where you're just kind of you're only controlling one unit at a time. It's almost like Pikmin in that sense. Anyway, let's move on. So I've got a couple different points I wanted to make here at the end. So later on, I'm going to create. There's a little thing I'm going to say about having directed at sports gamers, but gamers who are very much just kind of the sports people. But for now, what I'm going to do, also kind of directed at the sports gamers, is this is a sort of outsider perspective on ways that you could go over the hurdles of the current state of the industry being bad. I feel like this is a fairly universal thing, is that people don't like the way sports games are right now. People who like to play them don't like the way that they are, and people who don't like to play them hate that they are that way because it's affecting the rest of the gaming industry. So, here are my proposals. So, I hate this idea that I'm about to propose. But I know a lot of game company executives are still just absolutely just with a rock solid for the phrase live service. Like a pie cooling in a windowsill, but for money. I should put a disclaimer that I don't really know how a lot of the really new football games monetize themselves. Some of what I'm about to say could be real already. I haven't played them because I don't want to pay the price that they ask for digitally. I don't want to fill my shelf with them physically for the $5 copies of a couple of years ago. But basically the idea is this. You drop the year number and you run the game with consistent updates as one game. Like, instead of like you have Madden 2025, 2026, you just have EA's Madden Football or something, and then it just updates every year with seasons and stuff. And you could sell the game as like a rate, at a flat rate for the first section. Players would get whatever the current season is available to them off rip, but then each subsequent year or previous years could be sold as DLC at something of a discount, and that DLC comes with the season's rule changes, roster, etc., etc. And it could work kind of like an MMO at that point. You know how like Final Fantasy 14 has expansions, and you buy the expansion, but if you just buy the game, it comes with some of the expansions, but you have to buy more expansion. Am I making sense? You can even do things like running live events for stuff like preseasons or playoffs. Player characters can be carried through subsequent expansions, letting players really live the fantasy of being a pro player with like a career. I'm sure there'd be a lot of room for monetization schemes in here that I can't really stomach, but depending on licensing, they could sell cosmetics like old uniforms, special event uniforms, or could really embrace the fact that they are a video game and do something like a literal set where the players dress as like their team namesake. Like you have like the Dolphins, who are Dolphins, the Raiders as actually pirates, or like something stupid like that. Then again, there's like, it's like the Browns a team? I probably maybe not actually. Wait a minute. Wait. Actually, scratch that. I've just realized it's probably not a good idea. Or if like seasons or DLCs, they could sell historical seasons as DLC. I don't really know what that means for most sports. I'm not particularly tapped into pro football or anything, but I do know that there's stuff like, baseball has like Jackie Robinson's 1947 season. That was a big deal for both baseball and the world. Yeah, stuff like that. Now we have Proposal 2. This one has a bit of a snag in the fantasy play department, but let me explain the concept first. Basically, a football simulator with none of the teams or players that exist in real life. Just make them up, whole cloth. Like I said, this does run into the problem about fantasies, because, well, if the teams are made up and there's no real projecting how you think you could have done with the White Sox or something, now is there? However, there are a couple of ways around that. Teams can be made up of characters from a developer's franchises, a la Mario sports titles. Currently, EA is the one most well known for the sports sims, so that'd be, I mean, that could be a colorful cast, I guess. Sure, why not? What this does allow for, though, is more time to be taken on entries without any pesky licensing problems. There might be some sort of gray area as to where it pertains using plays that may or may not mimic real team playbooks, but I'm going to ignore the potential hurdle because I don't understand how things like copyright works as it pertains to how NFL games are played. I don't know. I don't even know where to begin researching on that. Retro Bowl is a mobile game that was actually inspired by Tecmo Bowl, not Techno, Tecmo. A classic arcade football game using relatively simple controls and not having you actually play defense. The game does get as close as they legally can to the actual teams by using the same color schemes for the jerseys and assigning the teams to the same cities. It's like, you know, instead of like the Eagles, you have it's Philadelphia. Just stuff like that. So it can be argued that the fantasy of being the brain behind your favorite team is still there if you squint a little and finish the team names for them. And then there's stuff like the Mario Sports titles, which usually aren't team sports, and when they are, the Mario spin-off titles are usually very arcadey. Like Mario Tennis is not a very big sim for real tennis. Or like, I mean, they did basketball on like the Wii. That was weird. Nintendo was probably doing it like that, though, just to be more fun to a wider audience, as is the MO of most Mario games. You make a game that a lot of people can enjoy, you know, it's kind of their whole thing. This method in particular has the benefit of just being funny. There's humor in seeing a character like Mario play sports with Bowser, and especially something like Mario Strikers. Granted, that's kind of just a made-up sport. It's not actually soccer, I think. I don't think they've changed the rules like that. You know, stuff like that. There's a lot of familiar faces, a lot of stuff that people can recognize. Final example I want to bring up is Backyard Sports. This is a series of games that features young children who play a variety of sports, from football to baseball, all sorts of shit. Well, the characters here aren't recognizable from anything outside these games. What this game manages to do with its cast is create a bond from audience to game through a couple ways. First of all, each character is dripping with personality in their designs. Like, they have just such unique cartoonish designs, and it gives you just like an instant feel of like, oh, I get who this guy is, alright? Second, each character is like some sort of superlative. They are all great at something. Absolutely the best in their field at something. Usually at the cost of something else pretty heavily. This creates hype around characters being in the game because they all feel like a member of a dream team in one way or another. And proof for this is purely anecdotal, as I've seen clips of streamers playing these games, and the comments are always gassing up one character or another. People are fans of these characters. These solutions exist, but they aren't popular with the usual sports crowd for one reason or another. Retro Bowl is very simple, for example. You don't even run the defense plays. Mario and Backyard Sports are very cartoony, and a lot of sports gamers are a little too self-serious to let themselves play a game like that, no matter what else the game has to offer. So, at long last, I shall round out what I set out to do with this video, attempt to expand the horizons of sports gamers. I don't know if these people even care what I have to say on the matter, but I'm going to go for it anyway. I'll be breaking it down by sport, so maybe if you like the games I recommend to these players, you could check out the sport-related title. I don't know, maybe not. If you're unsure, go to a used game store. They probably have them for like $5. First up is football, which if it isn't obvious by now is kind of the basis for this project to begin with. It's the most popular sport in America, so I'm kind of surrounded by it at all times and have plenty of time to think about this. Ultimately, what is football? Football games are very micro-focused, real-time strategy games with elements of a turn-based system where the players start and end a lot. So gameplay revolves also around managing the team roster, who is where, and things like that. To these sorts of gamers, I suggest Valkyria Chronicles. Valkyria Chronicles is a series of 4 games, so I believe only 1 and 4 are available in English right now. As of now, I think, at least that's easily accessible. I think 2 might have been translated at some point, but it's not on modern platforms. In it, you command a fictionalized unit in a slightly fantastical version of World War II. The game is formatted in a turn-based way with teams taking turns, but during those turns, time moves, so you have to make your moves navigating the battlefield in real time, making those split-second decisions. Off the battlefield, you decide who's in the roster, chosen from a list of classes that mark battlefield specialties, like the quick, far-running scouts, the armor-busting lancers, the situational snipers, and the supporting engineers. Each character in the game has a personal set of advantages and disadvantages that will inform if you choose to have them in your unit, and where you'll deploy them if you do. Unfortunately, Valkyria is not a series that has any sort of versus multiplayer generally. It's just a single player experience, but I think it's a good time and a change of pace, just a little one. Next up is soccer. Again, I'm American, so to my knowledge, modern FIFA games are basically gacha games, and soccer itself is sort of a strategy game. So, Girl Sweatline 2. This is a free gacha game. It's a turn-based strategy game where the characters are anime personifications of guns. It's got a whole bunch of sci-fi stuff going on, so I'm not really going to explain it here. Okay, I'll give a bit more of a reasonable suggestion. Soccer is incredibly popular the world over as an accessible and common game that often transcends language barriers. That's a difficult energy to match for a video game. So try to look at the gameplay of soccer games. It's also pretty simple as a sort of RTS game. StarCraft? Sure. StarCraft 1 was, and to a smaller extent still is, an international hit of a competitive RTS game that has had competitions in many different countries. StarCraft 2 also exists. Now, I wanted to put baseball in here, but baseball is very unique. I don't really know how to match the vibes of the mechanics of baseball into a different game. And I know that's a really shitty point to end the video on, but it's really all I've got. I don't know, man. I really don't know. If you like the MLB games, good news is that out of the current sport franchises that get games every year, MLB seems to be doing the best. So at least you have that. At least in gamers' opinions. I don't know about financially. So, not a great way to end the video, but it's what I've got. So, and until next time we meet, stay safe out there and look out for each other, because no one should be alone when the going gets rough.